Hi, everyone, and welcome to another live stream from Veeam Software. I'm Dave Russell, and I got two special guests today joining me on a topic around backup appliances that we're kind of cheerfully calling or toying with the notion of to appliance or not to appliance. Joining me, one of my colleagues from Veeam Software is Charu Madan. Charu, good morning.
Good morning and good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, great point. We do have people from literally all over the globe. Another special guest joining us from Nutanix is Mark Niemeyer. Mark,
Hello.
welcome.
Hello, hello.
See, everyone's on brand. We'll get to this in just a minute. But before we do, I just want to go back to what it is we're going to tee up and talk about. And it is specific to backup appliances, but we wanted to have a very kind of open or pro-con discussion before we get into one potential solution that Veeam and Nutanix have combined together to deliver. But we don't want to make this like an infomercial. And we definitely do welcome all of your questions. So please feel free to type those in. We've got a team that's monitoring that and will tease those up to us. So we think a little bit about, if we go to the first slide, what's going on in the backup market today. And if you've been following some of the streams, my colleague Jason Buffington and I have been highlighting some of the results from this data protection report that we've come up with. But if you're not familiar with this, we asked 1,550 different organizations, different individuals at different companies globally, a simple question, and this one was, what would drive you to change your primary backup solution? If we just highlight a couple of these, the top ones and another one, what we see is that the number one reason people would actually change their backup solution or go to a different solution or service was to improve the success rate of backups. In other words, to get the backup to actually back up appropriately. Then you see some cost considerations, try to improve the software or the hardware costs or improve the return on investment, total cost of ownership. Another functionality notion there of improve your recovery point, recovery time objective, your service level agreements. And then you see a couple of others, reduce complexity or improve ease of use, or more specifically, to deploy data protection in an appliance form factor. And I'd love to pitch it to both of you and get your kind of reactions. Maybe, Mark, you're our external guest. Let's go to you first and just see if any of this resonates with you or what you've been seeing in the industry.
Yeah, very much so. And thanks, Dave, for passing the ball to me. First of all, thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. So yeah, definitely when I talk to customers, I hear very similar stories. Nutanix is in the business of simplifying data centers on the primary side, but we see very similar asks from our customers on the data protection side as well. Different silos of technology, different silos of knowledge within the management teams, and a lot of complexity. A lot of time is being spent on really keeping on the lights in the data center rather than being able to focus on actual business-facing problems, right? Really helping the business generate revenue and make sure that everything keeps on running. So yeah, very, very similar, I would say very similar conversations that I'm having with my customers.
Charu, how about yourself? You focus a great deal on Veeam's alliance teams, and as such, you speak not only to customers but to Veeam partners as well. So you've got a very well-rounded perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking to our customers and kind of teeing off where Mark left off. Yes, customers are looking at solutions that are simple to implement, that are simple to operationalize, and really they can really, and that's your point number 5 on this survey that you conducted, that too many piece parts that they have to assemble is a pain point, and they're spending time on keeping the lights on versus really focusing on the business objectives. So very similar sentiments, and to be honest, that's one of the main reasons, and we'll talk more about that, is why we partnered together, to help solve some of those complexities for our customers.
And when I think back to a couple of years before I joined Veeam, I had the opportunity to do live polling when I was kind of more independent, an industry analyst, and I think for 3 years in a row at a pretty large event, like 2,500 attendees, I would ask a question around backup appliances. And we kind of differentiated between target-based appliances, meaning it's a repository that's best known by things like Data Domain and Exagrid, HPE Store Once, Quantum DXI, that kind of a notion. And then integrated appliances that has a backup application or portions of that along with it inside of it. And you can think of Avamar, you can think of some of the newer hyper-converged secondary storage vendors that fit that. But the question that I would ask is, are you more likely to move towards an integrated appliance or towards a target appliance? And then conversely, or are you more likely to move away from each of those? And it got maddening. After 3 years, I didn't do the polling question anymore because it was almost a perfect 25% of every one of these. So the market was going in all kinds of different directions. I think it kind of brings up a point that we've certainly tried to reinforce in this live stream, that there really is no one answer. I mean, it's not a question of good, better, best, or evolutionary, you want to evolve into something. Now, I know that at Veeam, we like to say simple, flexible, reliable. Mark and I were having a chat yesterday. I ordered up this PC like 2+ months ago. It finally arrived. And I didn't want to build it. I just wanted to spec it out, have someone else make it, right? So it was essentially an appliance that got drop shipped to me. And that was fine. I just wanted to consume it. Other people, my colleague, Michael Cade on the product strategy team, he spent literally like 80 hours researching every single component. He wanted to optimize every single thing. That is not unlike how some approach their backup infrastructure. And, Charu, maybe I'll, ask you to comment a bit about what do you see as kind of like, why would someone want to go down an appliance form factor for backup?
Yeah. I think you make a good point, Dave, that there's no one size that fits all. And we have found customers across the spectrum, like you said, who have different asks. Now, the appliance form factor works really well for a certain segment of our customers who are looking for simplicity, who want, like you said, the PC just being dropped in their, on their front step. And they are looking for not that amount of sort of customization, but they want the simplicity. They want to make their backup infrastructure invisible, if you will. So in some ways, that appliance form factor really works well for them. So that's clearly a pro for an appliance form factor. But then if you look at the other end of the spectrum, think about customers who have very sophisticated IT staff, large IT folks who are, who have different sets of specializations, and they're looking for deep customization. They're looking to really solve something very specific. They may like the flexibility of, putting the piece parts together. It's like, ordering takeout, or do I want to make something from scratch at my house? And at different points in time, both those options work, and both those are valid. So I would say that's one of the things that Veeam prides on. As you know, Dave, you know this, and I would say, Mark, you know this really well. Veeam is a pure play software company, and we provide our customers that flexibility and that choice that they can consume our software and then integrate it together with other piece parts. However, for the segment of customers who want an appliance, that's why we partner with the partners like Mark, you guys, and Nutanix to provide them that simplicity and deliver that form factor of an appliance.
Yeah, I like how you phrase that, Charu, because flexibility goes both directions. It means literally I can choose multiple options, and in some cases, the favorable option is deliver a more fully delivered, encapsulated experience. And in other cases, it's you point out I may have unique requirements. I may have staff that have to respond to very specific things that are maybe not generalized. Also have a notion of maybe I've made an investment. I have infrastructure that I've invested in that I want to get the most operational life out of. But while I'm just see it, we have a question. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly from Taki. What are some benefits to use Veeam and how it works? Well, we like to use the phrase simple, flexible, and reliable. Simple, that easy to use, easy to deploy, easy to manage on an ongoing basis. flexible, much like the conversation we've been having right now, that you can deploy it in many ways. I run Veeam here at home. The exact same bits that I use at home are the exact same Veeam code that's running in a large bank protecting 20,000 virtual machines and 8 petabytes of data. The difference is really the infrastructure. I have these SanDisk SSDs that I back up to. I believe they have pure storage arrays and some other hard disk arrays as well. So it's a matter of infrastructure. But that's one of the reasons why. And how Veeam works, I actually will give a commercial to say we have Veeam University, meaning free courses you can sign up for. Not only get trained on Veeam, learn more about it, but understand how you might want to deploy it. And we also have free downloads. We call them community editions of Veeam. So you can certainly go and get your hands dirty with that, as it were. And if we're working remotely like many of us are, we have a laptop version of that or an endpoint version of that you can be backing up your system. But Mark, I want to bring it back and talk a little bit more specifically now. So I just actually unexpectedly went off on a little discussion on Veeam. Let's have a discussion on Nutanix for those that may not be familiar with the company.
Yeah, sure. So Nutanix were really the pioneers in what we call hyperconverged infrastructure. If you look at your typical data center, there's a lot of components basically that form up that data center, right? So you have storage, you have SANs, you have compute like Cisco or Dell or HP, you have virtualization, you have networking, et cetera, et cetera. What Nutanix basically does is bring all of that together into a single solution, as you may, right? And we make it very easy. We've spent a lot of time developing a very powerful management experience around the entire platform. So a single box that has everything from storage all the way to virtualization, optimized to run pretty much any workload. What does this mean typically for your IT admins? Rather than having a lot of silos in your data center, not only from a technology perspective, but also from a management and domain knowledge perspective, now you can basically build teams of generalists, right? Nutanix makes very complex things like troubleshooting, or maybe even like a concrete example of adding storage to a SQL Server instance, make it very easy, rather than having to create a LUN and zone it in and make sure that the HBA sees it. For us, that is a 1 or 2 click operation, add storage to a production SQL Server instance. Other very good example that a lot of customers love is our upgrade ability. Not only our upgrading of our own software, but we can upgrade your firmware, your BIOS, and we do all of that in a completely rolling fashion. So no downtime for your applications. We orchestrate everything. We automatically download all the right bits. So within like minutes, sometimes minutes to like maybe an hour or so, we can upgrade your entire cycle. So really focus on, rather than keeping the lights on, right, and spend a lot of time troubleshooting and really, like I said, keeping the lights on, you can now focus on business-facing problems and help the company that way.
Perfect. And Charu, just heard about Nutanix, and we talked a bit about Veeam, but maybe let's combine this a little bit, meaning, by virtue of working on the alliances teams, tell us a little bit about the synergies between the two companies.
Yeah, great question, Dave. I think the reason we decided to get into this deep partnership together with Nutanix is really going to the fundamental DNA of both the companies. I will say one very common theme between both the companies is our deep customer centricity. Everything we do, everything Veeam makes, everything Nutanix makes, it's all about having customer delight and the simplicity, the ease of use, the ease of management, as kind of that cornerstones. And I think that's what really made us partner, decide that this is a partnership and this is the deep integration that we want to drive. And maybe if I could ask our producer to, show a slide which talks about the company philosophies and principles. Just in terms of our mindset, as companies, we are very agile. We are very nimble. We move fast. We move fast to market disruptions. And if folks can see the slide, I often joke about this with my friend Mark here, that we could swap the two names. You could put Nutanix on this side and Veeam on the other side, and it'll still, the message will not change, because both of us are market leaders in our respective space. Both of us as companies believe in that one-click simplicity or flexibility. We want to give our customers the choice, freedom of choice. And I think, Mark, you'll have some great analogies about, how Nutanix really believes in that freedom, which I think you'll get into later. So it really feels like the company philosophies are grounded in such similar principles. It just made sense for us to partner. And when the basic fundamentals are there, the product ingredients are solid, we come up with a great solution together.
Brilliant. I see we've got a question that came in. I think it's Wawan asks, can Veeam 1 deploy into Nutanix Mine? If you're not familiar with Veeam 1, that's our monitoring and analytics tool. And the short answer is yes, it absolutely can. And Mark, maybe I'll pitch it over to you, because that's a very interesting question that's asked, meaning this solution is not just sort of insular. You can monitor and protect other things as well. So maybe tell us a little bit about that and a little bit about Nutanix's view about getting into the backup space.
Yeah, very good question, Dave. And yeah, it's a good segue. So like I said, we focused a lot on, and we've been developing our platform now for the last 10, 12 years, and providing all of those benefits and making it very easy to deploy, easy to manage, but yet a very powerful, very resilient platform for primary infrastructure. It was a natural extension to go into like the data protection side of the house, right? Really extending the platform, maybe tweak it a little bit from an IO perspective, but really focus on building a platform for data protection workloads. And that's why the partnership with Veeam has been so instrumental in that, really working very closely together, basically integrating the components from Veeam with the Nutanix components to build a very powerful solution for data protection that, once again, is easy to deploy, easy to manage, easy to scale, easy to support. Maybe producer, maybe you can throw the architecture slide on the screen so I can dive into that a little bit. So to go into the specifics just a little bit, right? Nutanix Mine with Veeam is designed to be its own dedicated cluster where Veeam runs in hyperconverged mode on that cluster, right? So all of the components are automatically installed on the cluster. They are optimized to run on that cluster, and they're making use of all the resources in that cluster, right? We're including the regular commercial version of Veeam. So all of the functionality that Veeam typically provides is available from Nutanix Mine as well, right? And that's why that question was like a perfect segue into that. We're using the storage in the appliance, right? The storage that Nutanix provide as the backup target. So that's where all of the backups are being stored. Because it's the regular version of Veeam, of course, it can back up Nutanix really, really well, but it can also be used to back up any deployments that you have out in your data center, right? Whether that is like a vSphere deployment, maybe on your classical free-tier architecture with servers and SAN and storage, but they can also back up your physical servers as well, right? So very powerful on the front end. Really nice application integration, very easy to manage because we've basically included some of the backup capabilities into Prism. And think of Prism as the management UI for the Nutanix stack. Consumer grade, looks beautiful, very easy to use. Now, if you have requirements around long-term storage, Nutanix Mine with Veeam can, of course, tier off to storage that is more optimized for long-term storage, right? For archival use cases, whether that is cloud-based storage like AWS, Glacier, Azure, whether those are some of those on-prem data targets that Dave was talking about, right? Like the exagrids or the data domains. We can go out to tape if you want to, and then we have a Nutanix solution that is also optimized for archival storage, and we call that Nutanix Objects. very complete S3 compatibility. But if you are a Nutanix customer, and hopefully we have some customers on the line, it's a very nice 1, 2, 3 story. Nutanix for your primary, Nutanix for your secondary storage, and then Nutanix for your archival storage as well. So really extending the data fabric on the bottom. But I think the more powerful story is really around the management, where through policy-based management, you really control where copies of your data are being stored, whether that is snapshots on your primary, backups on your tertiary, and then tier over into Nutanix objects. Sorry, kind of a long answer, Dave, but I hope that was a nice, comprehensive design of Nutanix Mine.
No, it's a good answer in multiple ways, meaning it illustrates what the solution truly is, meaning what are the components in it, but also I think illustrates the flexibility that Charu was talking about earlier on, about it doesn't have to exist in a vacuum, where I use the phrase it's sort of insular. I mean, if you're an end-to-end Nutanix customer, this is almost a no-brainer. But even if you're not the Nutanix customer, or maybe not a Veeam customer, this is a scale-out, easy-to-manage, deploy solution for protecting the rest of your environment, other workloads that come in, but also you can still get value out of investments that you made, be it tape or other object storage devices, etc. But we did have a question come in from Christopher. So mine is a Nutanix and Veeam product. Who's going to be supporting this, and how will support for mine work between the two companies? Charu, I know you've spent some time by virtue of being in alliances, and I think almost a year that this has been in the making. Tell us a little bit about that, because I understand Chris's point, or Christopher's point. We've all heard of issues of, vendor A says vendor B and vice versa.
Yeah, the classic finger pointing scenario. Great question here. And yes, when customers are looking for that single integrated solution, so we are very mindful of that. And that's why the two companies have worked very closely together to put a unified support model in place. And customers absolutely can call Nutanix, open a support ticket there. And if it turns out to be a Veeam issue, behind the scenes, the Nutanix support teams will work closely with the Veeam support teams, with a warm handoff, and not like, hey, go talk to Veeam and it's their problem. It's really meant to be a very seamless support model. And really, I think, like, this day, we both as companies talk about our high net promoter scores, the NPS scores, and both the companies have really high NPS scores that we are extremely proud of. So we really want to have a very seamless model for our customers here. And I think one point I do want to make, yes, Nutanix Mine is a new product. That's a true statement. But if you think about the ingredients it's made up of, it's really a Nutanix AOS software and the Veeam software. And these products are not new. Collectively, between the two companies, we have over 25 years of product delivery experience. So the point here is that we are not talking about a version 1 or a version 2 product like some of our competitors have. We are talking about very mature products, very mature ingredients, which have come together to create this new integrated solution. So I want customers to understand that it's, we have our established track record of two very solid products.
Yeah, I do think that is a good point. It's not just let's go get a super micro server and put some software on top of it. Nutanix has been delivering a really actually pioneered, to your point, Mark, hyperconverged notion about a decade ago. Veeam now 12 years delivering backup software. There's an old joke, and I don't even know if it's a joke. I think it's partially true, and that is hardware will eventually fail and software will eventually work. And what it really means is, you learn the hard way how to battle test or harden a solution. And so to your point, Charu, you take battle tested or well-proven solutions, to use a better term, and you unite them, and you take a year figuring out, okay, what is the deployment experience, the management experience, in this case through Prism, the support experience, how is that going to be smooth and seamless? Because neither company wants to mess with their brand or their net promoter score. Well, awesome. As we begin to wrap up, I certainly want to thank Charu and Mark. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. Do want to give a signal ahead to some things that we've got coming. And we actually have a number of things in flight in short order here. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, my product strategy colleagues will have their weekly podcast, and that will be on Twitter. Friday at noon Eastern Time, my colleagues Corinne and Kirsten have a really interesting session, 10 VM backups that you need to know. And then actually next week, going back to Charu and Mark, next week on June 15th, the second version of mine is going to become generally available, and we'll have the latest Veeam version 10 software installed in it, which is the biggest release in Veeam's history. It's now been downloaded over 100,000 times. So speaking of battle tested. And then not too far after that, we're going to have our Veeam on June 17th and 18th. Veeam On will be a virtual event this year, like so many are, but both vendors will be there, meaning certainly Veeam will be there, but Nutanix will have a booth, a virtual booth there as well. And then do want to also mention coming up in September, Mark, Nutanix's flagship event, we have Veeam On, Nutanix has Nutanix.next will be coming up in September, I believe. So lots to look forward there. Thank you both so much. Thank you everyone for your questions, for tuning in. Stay safe, stay positive, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.